Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Slight deviation from the title. Is the Act working? Well, it's Acts. We've had that alluded to a few times today. And large animals, I'm going to talk about livestock, so everything from a Charolais bull to a day-old chick. So it's livestock rather than large animals. And get there. Press the, there we go. Sorry. And the role of Animal Plant Health Agency in protecting welfare, a number of different roles. Mostly, a lot of our work's on-farm welfare work, traditional role of responding to complaints, but also increasingly doing the cross-compliance inspections for people who are claimants who have livestock to make sure they comply with the EU statutory management requirements, which are effectively the welfare directives. We also have a role in welfare in transport, and that's authorising transporters, supervise loadings, approving journey plans, portal inspections. We also have a role in welfare at time of killing. That's not in slaughterhouses, but culling on farms and seasonal slaughters for local retail trade, and also welfare at markets. And also everything that we do, all our disease control work, is always underpinned by our responsibility for animal welfare. And just to let people know that second to TB, it is the biggest work area for the Animal and Plant Health Agency. And we are using the Act, and Mike's covered this. So there's the prevention of harm, unnecessary suffering. That's nothing new in the Act. But the promotion of welfare, meeting the needs of animals, that is new. And then various mechanisms which we can use, instruments, to try and help with that. And that's improvement notices and care notices. And then we have action to actively intervene when animals are in distress, and that's animals that are suffering, but also animals that are at risk of suffering, and that's an important addition. The new tools, so I'm going to concentrate on the new tools, improvement notices and care notices, and also taking possession of animals. But first, just thinking about where we are with animal welfare. So that's a distribution curve, very stylised. So over here, we're looking at suffering, and over to the left, or over to your right, it's a good life. What we mean by that, and there'll be a range, and in between there'll be a life worth living, the needs being met, needs not met, before we get down to suffering. And we've had a session earlier on this afternoon, and the three Davids talked about various factors which can push towards suffering, and these are the economic challenges. We've talked about how we respond to antimicrobial overuse of antimicrobials or responsible use of antimicrobials, but also other trends, how we're going to feed the world, increased demand for protein, and how we're going to cope with our demand for reduction in global warming gases. So they have the potential to push this way. In the meantime, we've got pulling back towards a life worth living, or a good life, and that can be the consumer, that can be your farm insurance schemes, your supermarkets, the veterinary profession, and we can also have the veterinary profession, and then advice and guidance from government. And at the same time, there's often a push, and these are dealing with the people who are getting themselves into trouble, the small minority of cases, livestock cases, where there is unnecessary suffering and needs to be a more active push, and that's where APHA will be using the Act in conjunction, partnership working with local authorities, or with the RSPCA, or with the Scottish SPCA. And if we think about when things go wrong, from the opening paragraph in Anna Karenina, all happy families are alike, all unhappy families are unhappy in their own way. And to a certain extent, we see that when we're dealing with animal suffering on farm. There's a whole range, a number of factors, and everyone's different. But there are broad themes in that. There are people who will be experiencing their own hardships. These may be economic hardships. It may be mental health hardships. It may be physical health hardships. We may have seen a business, a farm, which was functional, was working well, and there's been a change in the management. So somebody's died, or somebody's now left. Might be a senior stockman's person's left, and the people who are left behind are ineffectual or incapable. And we're also dealing with some people who will be just, they'll be more anarchic, and they will say, we don't see why people should tell us what to do, and they will do things their own way. Sometimes these people have considerable resources, both in time and in money, and they can sometimes be the more difficult people to deal with. So the tools that we have, improvement notices, and in some ways these can give us very quick results. This is a case that is Animal Plant Health Agency. Vet goes out in conjunction with Cambridge County Council trading standards. These are the condition of the pigs. This is a living environment. They were housed in this trailer 24/7, so a totally unsuitable environment. Local authority inspector served the improvement notice, came back 24 hours later. We've achieved compliance. They've been moved into a pen with appropriate bedding, dry lying areas. So the notice served compliance, and somebody who initially was argumentative and was resistant to change. However, the notices don't always work, but they can still serve a purpose. This is a case, Animal Plant Health Agency working with Suffolk trading standards, and we were out and cattle that were malnourished, cattle that were exposed to the environment, as in bad weather, no shelter, no dry lying areas, and improvement notices were served. They weren't complied with. However, it was made very clear to the farmer what the problem was, what was required, and a reasonable time scale was given to comply. The farmer didn't comply. When the case came to court, then it actually built that case, and the court was able to take a judgment that the farmer's actions were totally inappropriate, not just have actually caused suffering, but an opportunity to do something about it, and didn't. And the end result was that we have a disqualification order. So the long term, the animals under his care had been protected. However, this takes time, and this is a case from February of one year to September the next, before we got resolution and before that disqualification order came in. And we're interested in protecting the welfare of animals in the interim period. So therefore, we have the ability to take possession of animals. This is a case in Fife in Scotland. And so malnourished cattle, you've got malnourished sheep, you can see this in the bottom right there. These are cattle, it's lying carcasses in here, huge amounts of mud. We had cattle which were stuck in the mud that couldn't be moved there. And we managed to get a quick resolution to that, working with Fife County Council. 15th of February was the first visit by the council. They appreciated the seriousness of the situation, contacted Animal Plant Health Agency. We were out first thing on the 16th. We were able to issue a statement stating that the animals are suffering, and the local authority could then start going about taking possession and providing immediate care and immediate fodder for those animals. The very next day, all the sheep were moved off. The day after that, all the cattle were moved off, and by end of the month, there'd been a disposal order. The cattle had been sold. An important point in this case is that the revenue from that sale exceeded the costs, and the local authority was recouped by £5,000. Now, this case, in some ways, it worked well because we had an experienced local authority, knew what they were doing, they had good contact with the court, and we had a farmer who didn't resist those changes, and there was some value to the animals. It's not always that straightforward. What are the limitations under the Act? Improvement notices. Sometimes we serve improvement notices, we get incomplete compliance. The local authorities or other enforcement agencies are reluctant to take that to the courts because it's not seen as being severe enough, and then we encourage a culture of allowing non-compliance. But probably the biggest challenges come in taking possession. It's not always practical to provide care in situ. Often the facilities are just in such a dire state. Often you'll have a keeper who may create mischief. Often it's very difficult removing the animals. Sometimes we're dealing with 100+ animals. Where do you find somewhere to locate those animals? There may be disease control issues to consider. We often have delays getting a court hearing for a disposal order, and sometimes we get a disposal order and then the farmer appeals, and that increases the time. And often the animals may be of low value and may be worthless, so it's not possible for the local authority to recoup the costs, and often they're left with bills of many tens of thousands of pounds. And again, so what can we change? Mike alluded to it, and Sheila was talking about rights without responsibilities. Well, we have powers without the responsibilities, and do we need, or how do we fund these expensive measures where it can be many tens of thousands of pounds to take possession of animals? And can we learn from other statutory instruments and approaches? And again, we had the idea of fixed penalty notices being discussed this morning. Okay, thank you, and thanks to colleagues who contributed.